They all looked so happy. The bride was glowing. The groom, my son, was beaming with pride. Laughter echoed through the garden venue, clinking glasses and joyful chatter filling the air like music. But where I stood, just a few steps away from the crowd, my chest felt tight. There was no seat for me. Not one. I searched every row of pristine white chairs with ribbons and roses tied to the backs. My name wasn't on a single one. I had arrived early, dressed in the soft lavender dress I knew my son loved on me. I had styled my hair just like I used to when he was a little boy. He once said it made me look like a queen. But that day, at his wedding, I was invisible. And the moment I asked where I should sit, his bride, my new daughter-in-law, giggled and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "It's just a joke. Mother-in-law surprise seating, right?" The guests burst into laughter. Even my son chuckled and looked away. I stood there clutching the small clutch bag in my hand, heart pounding, cheeks burning. I nodded slowly, like I understood the joke, like I wasn't hurt, like it didn't feel like the ground just slipped from beneath my feet. But inside, I wasn't just hurt. I was humiliated. Before I dive in, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. It really helps more people hear stories like this. They thought I would stay silent. They thought I'd smile politely and go stand in the back. But what they didn't know was that I had something they'd all forgotten. Something my late husband left behind. A legal document with the power to change the course of everything they were celebrating that day. And it was sitting right in my bag. The will. Let's go back. Just a few months earlier, my husband passed away. He had been sick for years, and I took care of him every single day. My son, well, he got too busy. Visits turned into phone calls, and then not even that. But I kept my heart open. I believed that grief might bring us back together. I believed he still loved his father, and maybe he just didn't know how to cope. But when we sat with the lawyer, my son didn't even flinch when I mentioned what we should do with the estate. He brushed me off, said I was emotional, and should let the men handle the business. What he didn't realize was that before his death, my husband secretly changed the will. After a long conversation one night, he told me, "If our son has turned his back on us now, how can he carry our legacy forward?" He asked me to keep it safe, hidden. "Not until the right time," he said, "when they need to remember who you are." I didn't know when that moment would come, but as I stood at the wedding, the only mother without a chair while they all toasted to the future, I realized the moment had arrived. Earlier that day, before heading to the wedding, I had placed the sealed envelope inside my bag. I wasn't planning to use it. I truly wasn't. I just carried it with me like a quiet strength, a reminder that I still mattered, that I wasn't some leftover old woman they could push aside. But when I was laughed at, mocked publicly and with such cruelty, it triggered something in me, something fierce, something final. The ceremony went on. I stood near a tree at the back, watching from a distance. I heard them exchange vows. My heart trembled, not with joy, but with betrayal. The same boy I once held in my arms, now a man who didn't even flinch while his wife humiliated me in front of 100 guests. And when the minister said, "You may kiss the bride," I saw the pride in his eyes, the smile on his face. That smile wouldn't last. The reception began shortly after, with waiters carrying silver trays and champagne flutes. I was still standing. Nobody offered me a seat, not even when the dancing started. I watched them all, the in-laws, the co-workers, the friends, dressed to impress and pretending perfection. But they didn't know who had just stepped into that garden. They didn't know the storm I was holding back with both hands. When the microphone was passed around for toasts, I was surprised to hear my name. "Would the mother of the groom like to say a few words?" one of the bridesmaids asked with a grin. I took it as another joke, but I smiled politely, walked up slowly, and accepted the mic. Gasps followed. Some were surprised I was even there. Others were bracing for a sweet, short speech. Instead, I reached into my bag and pulled out the envelope. "I do have something to say," I said softly, then held up the sealed document. "This is the last will and testament of my husband, Jonathan Mills." The bride's face went pale. My son froze mid-sip. Laughter died instantly. Chairs creaked as guests leaned forward. I cracked the seal and unfolded the paper slowly. And then I read. "To my beloved wife Eleanor, for the years of devotion, love and sacrifice, you are my everything. The house, the land, the company shares, all are to remain solely in your name. Should our son forget his roots and fail to honour our family, then let him be reminded that legacies are not inherited, they are earned." I looked up. "That includes the wedding venue," I added calmly. He didn't know, but his wedding was hosted on my property, and by my permission. Gasps turned to murmurs. The bride looked like she might faint. My son stood there, stunned, the microphone trembling in his hand. The same hand I used to hold when he had nightmares as a child. His smile was gone, replaced by shame. And that was only the beginning. There was a silence so thick it could have swallowed the whole wedding. I stood there, my voice still echoing from the speakers, holding the unfolded will with steady hands. No music, no laughter, no clinking of glasses. Just a field of stunned faces and a son whose mouth had gone dry. My son, Michael, lowered the champagne flute slowly. His bride, Rachel, clutched his arm like she was bracing for an earthquake. And she was right to. Because the earth beneath their perfect little celebration had just cracked open. I handed the microphone back without another word, stepped down from the platform, and made my way toward the back of the garden, where the shade of a willow tree offered me a moment of breath. I didn't need applause. I didn't want revenge. I wanted them to feel it. Feel what it meant to be forgotten, to be left out, to be treated like an old relic when you were the one who built the foundation they stood on. I leaned against the tree and looked out. Guests were murmuring. Some picked up their phones. The DJ stood frozen, unsure if he should cue the next song. Rachel whispered something frantically into Michael's ear, and he stormed off, leaving her alone on the dance floor in a dress that suddenly didn't look so white. I watched him head toward the back gate. He was looking for me. He found me. "Mom!" he hissed through clenched teeth. "What the hell was that?" I looked up at him, calm as the clouds overhead. "That was your father's voice, from beyond the grave. You could have said something, done this another way. This was supposed to be our day." I straightened up. And what was I supposed to do when there was no chair for me, Michael? Sit in the dirt and smile like it was all okay? It was a joke. Rachel said... I held up my hand. "No, she humiliated me, and you let her. You laughed." He opened his mouth, then shut it again. I continued. "You had every chance to treat me with dignity, but you chose pride. You chose performance. Now you'll live with the consequences." His face twitched. Guilt, maybe, or anger. But either way, he had nothing more to say. He walked away slowly, head down, shoulders hunched. Back at the main area, Rachel had gone pale. One of her bridesmaids whispered urgently, and I could see the cracks forming. Some guests were already leaving. Others whispered while staring at their phones. Someone had already tweeted a photo of me holding the will. Grandma just read a will at her son's wedding. Whole vibe dead. Wedding crash. I didn't even know who posted it, but it spread fast. One of the venue staff walked up to me. "Ma'am, are you the property owner?" I nodded. "Yes, everything is still under my name, including this garden." The young woman looked shocked but respectful. "Do you want us to continue the event?" I glanced at the guests again, then at my son. "Yes," I said, "but make sure they know. They're now on borrowed time." Back at the head table, Rachel was now speaking to the wedding planner, voice rising, arms flailing. I watched her try to regain control of a day that no longer belonged to her. That's when my granddaughter approached me. Lily, Michael's daughter from his first marriage. She was 12, with her mother's quiet grace and my husband's eyes. "Grandma," she said softly, "can I sit with you?" That one sentence made my throat tighten. "Of course, sweetheart," I said, kneeling so we were eye level. "I always have a seat for you." She sat beside me under the willow tree, both of us watching the chaos unfold from a peaceful distance. I didn't tell her what the will said. But she seemed to understand more than most adults in the crowd. Then something unexpected happened. The lawyer arrived, Mr. Hammond, grey suit, serious face, a briefcase in hand. I hadn't asked him to come. I hadn't even told him about the wedding. He approached quietly. "Mrs. Mills," he said, "I heard what happened. One of my staff saw the video online. I figured you might need support." I was stunned. "You came all this way?" He nodded. "Your husband's last wish wasn't just about the property. There's more. Much more." I stood slowly, heart suddenly pounding for a different reason. "What do you mean?" He opened the briefcase and pulled out a second document. "There's an amendment, a second will, one your husband wrote in private shortly before his passing. You were listed as the primary executor, but you weren't the only one mentioned." My blood ran cold. "Who else?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he said, "We should speak somewhere quieter. This changes everything." I looked back toward the wedding. Michael had just returned to the crowd, but he looked like a man who had aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Rachel was trying to paste a smile back on her face, but the cracks were showing, and they were deep. "Tell me," I said, "what did my husband hide?" Mr. Hammond looked me straight in the eye. "He left everything to you. But he also wrote in conditions. If your son failed to fulfill them, the assets wouldn't just skip to another family member, they'd transfer ownership entirely." I felt dizzy. "To who?" He handed me the amendment. My hands shook as I unfolded it, and then I saw the name. I gasped. "No, it can't be." But it was. I stared at the name on the page. Not Michael, not Rachel, not anyone from our family line I could have predicted. It was Daniel Cooper. I whispered it aloud, trying to understand. "Daniel Cooper." My voice shook. My hands gripped the edges of the paper so tightly that I almost tore it. Who is this?" I asked, my eyes scanning the amendment again, searching for a mistake. Mr. Hammond replied calmly, "Daniel Cooper, 29, born in Memphis. He's listed here as Jonathan Mills' godson. Your husband met him while volunteering at the Community Veteran Center. According to the documents, they grew close over the years. Your husband helped him through college and even co-signed his first apartment lease." I shook my head slowly. "Jonathan never told me any of this." The lawyer gave a sympathetic look. "Apparently, he wanted to. But after your son's behavior worsened, he changed course. He told me, and I quote, 'I'd rather my legacy go to someone who understands sacrifice and loyalty than someone who abandoned both.'" I stood there frozen beneath the willow tree as guests danced again in the distance, unaware that the ground beneath them was about to collapse even further. Daniel Cooper. That name was about to destroy more than just a wedding. It was going to burn down every illusion my son had built about power, inheritance, and control. Still shaken, I asked, "But what does this mean? What exactly did Jonathan leave to Daniel?" Mr. Hammond took a breath and spoke carefully. "Everything. If your son failed to show basic respect and honor, then the family trust, real estate assets, stocks, the company, and even the estate grounds would all revert to Daniel. You, of course, retain lifetime rights to live on the property. But once you pass, Daniel is the sole beneficiary." I blinked. "Even this wedding venue?" He nodded. "Yes, ma'am." I laughed, sharp and bitter. So all of this, all the fake smiles, the chairs for everyone except me, the bride's cruel little joke, is happening on land that now belongs to a complete stranger. Not a stranger, he said gently. Someone your husband trusted deeply, more than his own son. My legs trembled. I reached for the bench behind me and sat down slowly. Lily noticed something was wrong and reached out to squeeze my hand. I held hers tightly. Meanwhile, the wedding music restarted, louder this time. The couple was clearly trying to salvage the event. Rachel was now on the mic, forcing laughter, saying things like, "Family is complicated, and today is about joy." Her voice sounded like glass about to crack. Michael had no idea what was coming next. I whispered to Mr. Hammond, "Is Daniel here? Did he come?" The lawyer hesitated, then smiled. "Actually, he's about to." I blinked. "What?" "He's waiting at the gate. I told him to stay out of sight until you approved, but he wanted to be here, just in case you needed support. And I think now would be the right time." I stood slowly. My eyes scanned the crowd again. This wasn't over, not even close. I nodded to Mr. Hammond. "Bring him in." Within minutes, I saw a tall man in a dark navy suit approaching. He had a calm walk, a warm face, and eyes that reminded me so painfully of Jonathan, it made my breath catch. He stopped a few steps from me and spoke softly. "Mrs. Mills?" I nodded. "You're Daniel?" "Yes, ma'am. I'm honoured to finally meet you." I took his hand in both of mine. "My husband trusted you with everything. That's not something I'll ever take lightly." "I'll honour him," he said, voice strong, "in every way." A wedding staffer came rushing toward us, clearly stressed. "Ma'am, sorry, but the bride is asking if you're coming to the family photo. They're waiting on you." I gave a small smile. "Tell her I'll be there." But not alone. As the staffer rushed off, I turned to Daniel and Mr. Hammond. "Let's give them a picture they'll never forget." We walked toward the photo session, and heads started turning as soon as we appeared. The guests paused their conversations. The music softened. Rachel's fake smile twitched. Michael's eyes locked onto Daniel, puzzled. I stepped next to my son and calmly placed my hand on his shoulder. "Michael, meet Daniel." My son blinked. "Who?" I replied coldly. "Your father's chosen heir." His face twisted in confusion. "Wait, what are you talking about? That was just a reading. It's not legally binding." I tilted my head. "It was, and Mr. Hammond is here to confirm every word of it." The lawyer stepped forward, briefcase in hand. "The amended will is dated, notarized, and filed. There's no loophole, no contesting. Your father made his intentions clear." Michael's face went blank. Rachel stuttered, You can't do this. This is our wedding." I turned to her slowly. "And yet you made sure I had no seat. Consider this my RSVP." The crowd murmured again. Phones were out, whispers spreading faster than wildfire. And then, for the first time in the entire evening, Michael had no words. He looked at Daniel, then at me, then back at the lawyer. His eyes darted wildly. I need a drink," he muttered, stumbling away. Daniel stepped closer, gently but firmly. "Let me handle things from here, Mrs. Mills. I'll protect everything your husband built." I nodded, watching Michael disappear into the crowd, the weight of everything crashing onto his shoulders. This wasn't just about a seat. This was about respect, about legacy, about a mother who finally stood up, and about a man who lost everything, because he didn't know who he was dealing with. The wedding photos never happened, not officially. What happened instead was chaos, with a slow-burning start. I stood there beside Daniel as Rachel stared at us with eyes wide and trembling. Her wedding makeup began to smudge from the heat of embarrassment more than the weather. Her cheeks flushed, her lips parted, and her gaze darted between me, the lawyer, and the man she had never met, but now realized controlled more of her future than the husband she just married. And then it started. A single glass shattered on the ground. Someone had dropped their drink. The sound jolted everyone back into reality, and Rachel lost it. "No, no, no!" she shouted, voice high and sharp, like porcelain cracking. "This isn't how it's supposed to go." Michael reappeared from the crowd, trying to grab her arm. "Rachel, calm down." She ripped her arm away. "Did you know about this?" she yelled, pointing at me and Daniel. "Did you know she had a will? Did you know she could ruin us like this?" Michael looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. "Of course not. I didn't even know he changed anything." Rachel's voice trembled. "You told me this estate would be ours. You told me this land was part of our life plan." People began filming again. The bridesmaids whispered. The groomsmen shuffled awkwardly. I looked at Daniel. He didn't flinch. Calm, ready, unshaken. Rachel stormed toward me next, eyes wild. "You planned this, didn't you? You wanted to humiliate me on my wedding day." I didn't move. "You humiliated yourself the moment you said there was no seat for me. That wasn't a joke. That was cruelty dressed in laughter." She growled. "We don't need your money. We don't need this stupid venue. We'll buy our own house." Mr. Hammond cleared his throat. "With what funds exactly? This estate owned the mortgage on your condo, your car lease, and even the wedding expenses, all paid through the family trust, which is now out of your husband's control." Her mouth dropped open. I continued, voice steady, quiet, but sharp. "You should have given me a chair, just one chair." Rachel spun around and screamed at Michael. "You told me everything was handled," he shouted back. "I didn't know my dad was going to give everything to some random guy." Daniel stepped forward for the first time. "I'm not random. Jonathan supported me since I was 18. While you were ghosting your father and ignoring his calls, I was helping him sort medical records, sitting beside him at chemo, making sure he had someone to talk to." Silence again. Rachel couldn't speak. Michael looked crushed. I just thought he was being dramatic. He always said he didn't feel appreciated." "And he wasn't," I said. "By you." I turned to the guests, who had now completely stopped pretending this was a normal event. The DJ didn't even try to restart the music. Some people had already left. Others stood awkwardly, phones in hand, waiting for the next twist in the drama. I could feel the pity on their faces. But I didn't want pity. I wanted justice. And that had already started. "Ladies and gentlemen," Mr. Hammond said suddenly, loud enough for all to hear, "there will be a formal announcement regarding the transfer of estate control by end of this week. Until then, I suggest we end this reception early. This venue is no longer authorized to host events under the current contract. Ownership has shifted. Permanently." Gasps again. Rachel's mother approached, whispering fiercely into her daughter's ear. "You need to fix this now," she hissed. "Apologize. Grovel if you must." Rachel's eyes filled with tears. "Fix what? You think she'll forgive this? You think this can be undone?" Her mother glared at her. "You embarrassed her in front of her entire family. What did you think would happen?" Rachel turned to me again, slower this time, like someone stepping into traffic. "I'm sorry," she said stiffly. "For the seating thing. It was just... I thought it'd be funny." I stared at her a long moment. "I don't accept your apology," I replied, "because it wasn't meant for healing. It was meant to save face." Then I looked at Daniel. "Let's go." As we turned to leave, Michael called out, "Mom, wait." I stopped, but I didn't turn around. "Are you really going to do this?" he asked, voice cracking. "Are you really going to leave me like this?" I slowly turned and looked him in the eye. "You left me first. I was invisible to you until I became an obstacle." He stepped forward, but I raised a hand. "You chose pride over presence, Michael. And you handed your inheritance to a stranger because he showed your father more love in 5 years than you did in 15. He looked broken. He had no defense. "I don't hate you," I added. But you need to understand, there are consequences to forgetting the people who raised you. And with that, I walked out. Daniel walked beside me. Mr. Hammond followed with the briefcase. And the wedding? It unravelled completely, like a house of cards that had been shaking all day and finally collapsed under its own arrogance. But the real storm was still coming. The next morning, I woke up not to the sound of birds, but to the buzz of my phone vibrating non-stop on the nightstand. I glanced at the screen. Dozens of missed calls, messages, emails and notifications, some from unknown numbers, some from reporters, a few from distant relatives I hadn't spoken to in years, and 24 from Michael. The videos had gone viral overnight. Apparently, someone had captured the entire scene, from the moment I was told there was no seat for me, to me standing with the will in hand, to the final confrontation with Michael and Rachel. It was everywhere. TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. Even morning TV segments had picked it up, using titles like "Mother of the Groom Flips the Wedding with a Will." "No seat for Mom." Her mic drop ended the reception. "Son's inheritance goes to godson after wedding insult." I should have been angry, or overwhelmed. But all I felt was peace. I made tea, opened the window and let the morning breeze touch my face. For once, I didn't feel like a guest in my own life. A knock came at the front door. I wasn't surprised. Daniel stood outside, holding a manila folder and a bouquet of wildflowers. "For you," he said simply. I smiled, letting him in. "You're early," he shrugged. "Figured we'd be busy today. The bank appointments, the press releases, updating the business records. But first..." He placed the folder on the table. "I need your blessing." I raised an eyebrow. "For what?" He opened it to reveal blueprints, a new layout for the property, a family centre, a garden, a scholarship fund in Jonathan's name. "I want to use the estate for good," Daniel said. "Not to erase your family's name, but to give it meaning again. I want to turn the company into something your husband would have been proud of, and I want you involved every step of the way." Tears welled in my eyes. In that moment, Daniel didn't feel like a stranger anymore. He felt like a son. 3 weeks later, Rachel filed for an annulment. Apparently, once she realised the mansion, company and even their honeymoon tickets were under the Mills Trust, now controlled by Daniel, her love story crumbled. Fast. Michael moved out of their apartment after the lease was revoked due to non-payment. And the final insult. His job at the family business was quietly dissolved by the new board. Daniel offered him a severance package. Nothing more. Nothing less. And me? I finally sat in a chair of my own. At a community event held in the same garden where the wedding had once taken place, I sat front and centre, this time not forgotten, not laughed at, not brushed aside. The stage had a photo of Jonathan framed in gold. The banner above it read, "In honour of legacy, loyalty and love." Daniel gave a speech. Then he invited me to say a few words. I stood slowly, took the mic and said, "Some people think love is loud, that it's about grand gestures and big moments. But real love is about showing up. It's about offering someone a seat before they ever have to ask for one." I looked across the crowd, some familiar faces, some new. My son forgot that. My daughter-in-law laughed at that, but my husband never did. And now, neither will this community. Applause erupted, but the loudest sound in my heart was silence. Peaceful, satisfied silence, because I didn't come to destroy a wedding. I came to reclaim my worth. And the will? It didn't just change an estate, it changed everything.